Welcome back to this Beer with Nat mini-series. On every episode of Beer with Nat, I share a beer and a chat with people who do what they love for a living. But this mini-series is a little different. Instead of chatting with women who work in the beer industry, like I normally do, this time I'm chatting with women who don't. Why? To show that it's not just women who work in beer that love it. Over the next 4 episodes, I chat with an actress, archivist, podcaster, and broadcaster, not only about their careers and what it's like to do work that they love for a living, but why beer is their beverage of choice. Today's guest is Ellie King, archivist at the Cambridge Arts Theatre. Ellie tells us about what sparked her interest in a career as an archivist, the training required, and the coolest project she's worked on so far. We also chat about what got Ellie into beer, what inspired her to set up her beery Instagram account, and what she enjoys most about the online beer community that she's a part of. Ellie is a big fan of Burning Sky Brewery. She lets us know why in the chat, so she's drinking their Arise Pale Ale. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on the same beer, but I had a lovely fruit-forward pale ale from Rock Leopard Brewing to keep me company. Just a quick heads up, this episode was recorded remotely, so the audio quality is not quite the same as previous seasons, but I hope you still enjoy it. Here's Ellie. Have you already opened your beer?
No, I haven't.
Oh, we can get the great sound in.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So why don't we start with the beer that you are drinking at the moment? So let me know what beer it is and why it's special to you.
Okay, so I have decided this evening to crack open a can of Burning Sky Arise Pale Ale. It's a 4.4% very sessionable pale, but Burning Sky are very close to my heart because in 2013 I moved to a village called Glynde, which is just over the main road from Firle, which is the village that Burning Sky live in. And I got married in 2013, the weekend that Burning Sky set up their brewery. And our reception venue was opposite the brewery. So when we were setting up our wedding reception, we had people coming in saying, like, are you the brewery? No, we're the wedding. And obviously didn't know what Burning Sky was then. Like, they were just setting up.
They were totally new.
They were totally new, yeah. So it was funny kind of. Then I was working in a pub in Glynde, and then we got their beer in, and I was like, oh, it's that brewery. Oh, okay. And then, yeah, just seeing them go from strength to strength, they've always had a special place in my heart. And they're the brewery that got me into kind of saisons and mixed firm beers, and just they opened up a whole world of beverage that I had no idea existed. So yeah, lots of love for Burning Sky, and that is what I am opening.
And why the Arise in particular?
I think, well, mainly the reason it's not Plateau is because Plateau is their cask. I think it's 3.8% pale, but obviously I can't get hold of Plateau on cask at the moment in Cambridge, not just yet. So Arise was kind of the next big thing, the next kind of nearest thing that I could get hold of. But they seem to just nail every style that they touch in their own kind of very unique way. You know, they're not kind of chasing trends, they're just chasing quality beer that people can drink without too much fuss, you know?
Yeah, I absolutely love their saisons. And
Yeah.
I haven't actually had many of their pale ales or IPAs because I know I love saison as my favorite style, so I tend to stick to those.
Petit Saison there was a real gateway saison for me. I just absolutely love that beer.
Yeah, it's wonderful to find a brewery that can do great hoppy beers, great saisons, great wild and funky beers as well. They really
Absolutely,
do it all.
I could never get bored drinking Burning Sky beer.
So yeah, how's your beer tasting? What are some of the main aromas and flavors there?
So it's really pale, and it just smells really fresh. It's kind of got like a fresh floral grassy smell, and then it's kind of a little bit fruity. It's got a little bit of a fruit bite, but it's not heavy at all. I mean, it kind of sounds like it's not a compliment, but you could really drink it and just not think about it, but be very aware you're drinking something really nice, and you could just drink it all night.
I know exactly what you mean. One of those ones where like you just know it's so good you don't need to think about it. Because
Yeah.
I think sometimes people think, oh, if we don't think about it, it means it's forgettable. But
Yeah, well,
it's the opposite in this
no,
case.
it's very distinctive in its own way, and for me, it's just one of the best pale ales in the country.
Well, I wasn't able to get the exact same one, but I have a pale ale at home from Rock Leopard, which I've tried recently, and it's like super fruit forward, very mandarin, loads of hop bitterness, but just enough malt sweetness to balance it all out. So I'm going to drink some of that while we chat. So we're going to drink some beer and chat a bit about your career. So you're an archivist, which is
I
so
am.
fascinating, and I'm so excited to learn all about it. And you currently work for Cambridge Arts Theatre and have
Mhm.
just completed your postgraduate diploma, so you are official.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thanks.
I think for me, I don't even really know what the day to day looks like for the role of an archivist or for what your work is. So
Mhm.
let's start with that, the day to day, and then we'll go back to your early days and sort of why you chose this career and how you got into it.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's a very varied career. So it kind of depends on what collection you're working on, what your day to day looks like. And obviously, social distancing, I don't have any volunteers in at the moment, and volunteers
Mm.
are usually a big part of my job. So usually when I come in, I would, remind myself what volunteers I have in for the day, make sure that the work is prepped for them. Generally, that work will be taking usually it's paper documents out of their old, very grubby folders and putting them in their new ones, removing any metal, anything that can be kind of damaging to paper over time, we'll replace with acid-free folders. So they do lots of that kind of grubbier work. And then I spend a lot of time with Excel spreadsheets because at the moment I'm doing a cataloging project. So that is creating essentially a kind of database for the Cambridge Arts Theatre archive, but I'm doing it from scratch. It's never been done before. So
Oh
I have
my
to kind of,
goodness.
yeah, it's a lot of work. So I've had to kind of appraise all of this material, figure out how it might fit together into a coherent catalogue that researchers could then access for the further research and education purposes.
And does this just live with the theater then, or does it enter a bigger archive so it's more easily searchable?
Currently, the archive is kind of split between the Victoria and Albert Museum's Theatre and Performance Department and the theatre itself. So in the late 70s, the theatre knew it had all of this kind of archival material dating back to the 30s when the theatre was founded, but they really didn't know what to do with it. They were worried that it would just get kind of damaged or lost or binned. So they gifted it to the V&A. But then obviously since then the theatre's been accruing more and more stuff because they've been open this whole time. And so they got back in touch with the V&A and they put this project together. And so my job is to kind of stitch these two parts of the collection together into one mega archive that will then go back to the V&A where it can be accessed and researched in their new site in Stratford.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. That is a big project.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's kind of daunting. It's my first one as like a proper
Now that
um,
you're official.
proper
Yeah.
archivist. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, take us back to the early days then. What got you interested in pursuing this career path and what sort of training has it taken to get to where you are?
So probably where are we now? 2020. So yeah, I guess actually, funny enough, around like 2012 and 2013 were really like big kind of years for me. I'd been working in retail since I left uni the first time round, and I'd kind of got as much out of it as I could, really. I'd kind of got up to management level and just thought, actually, this isn't for me. So I wanted to retrain, but I wanted to go back to uni and study again, but I didn't want kind of just another humanities degree that would, it's great, like great, learning's great, but I kind of needed it to have a career path
Hmm.
with it. And I'd always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to work for a museum or gallery. So I did an art history and museum curating MA at Sussex in 2014, 2015. And that came with a 6-week work placement. And my placement ended up being at the archive of a big kind of country house in West Sussex called Westdean, which is a college for creative arts. They do textile conservation, clockwork conservation,
Oh, wow, that
lots of
sounds really
fine art.
interesting.
Yeah, but the house is kind of an archive in itself. It was owned by a guy called Edward James, who was a patron of Salvador Dali and Rene Magritte in the 20s and 30s. So he was kind of right there in those kind of pinnacle moments of the surrealist movement. And you might know the Lips sofas, like I think that,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay, so he kind of co-invented that with Dali, and there were two of them in the house. I think they've since been sold. I think one of them now actually belongs at the V&A, funnily enough. But it was his archive was kind of the first thing that I worked on in a semi-professional capacity, and it was just so fascinating, kind of seeing all of the behind the scenes stuff. So not only seeing all these amazing objects but then being able to kind of delve into their history and knowing that actually there's so much more than just, the painting or the plaque that you read on the side of an object in a gallery or museum. A lot of work has gone into creating that, and a lot of that information comes from the archive, which people don't often see. And I've always kind of really liked the behind the scenes aspect of things. When I was a kid, I kind of wanted to work in, weirdly, theatre or film, but behind the scenes, I wanted to,
You wanted to be on the crew and make it all
yeah, like
happen.
the hidden stuff, and like know how the magic works. And then when I'd finished the course, I did some volunteering at the Keep, which is an archive in East Sussex, which houses the University of Sussex collections as well as East Sussex County Council. And then I was in a good position to apply for an internship working on the archive of Lord Richard Attenborough, David Attenborough's brother, the filmmaker.
Oh, wow. My dad's such
Yeah.
a huge fan of his.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah, he worked for the company that did the surround sound for Jurassic Park, so he loves that movie and he loves Sir
Oh
Richard
my
Attenborough.
God. Your dad's like my new hero. There's no reason why you would know this about me, but Jurassic Park is completely unironically one of my favourite films.
Oh, how funny.
I just think it's such a 'cause film studies is my first master's was in film studies.
So that was even more exciting for you to work on his archive then.
Yeah, it was mad. Yeah, and there was only one box in the archive of Jurassic Park stuff, but it contained some scripts and it contained some back and forth correspondence from Richard Attenborough and Steven Spielberg around the characterization of John Hammond, Attenborough's character in the film, and it was just like, oh my God, it was just so fascinating, and it was so weird that like this film that I've kind of loved since I saw it when I was 10. And there I was casually flicking through correspondence between Spielberg and Attenborough.
Wow, what a dream.
Yeah, it was mad. And it was an incredible professional experience as well. Just learning how to negotiate an archive of that size. It ended up being something like, it was 800 boxes in the end, once it was
Oh my
all archived.
goodness.
Yeah,
Are you on a team?
there were three of us, two
Okay.
archivists and me, and it was an 18-month project.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so that was kind of my first like proper kind of view into actually what being an archivist might entail. And
So you were like, sign me up. Let's make it
yeah,
official.
yeah, I was. Although it took me another couple of years where I actually got round to doing the archives course. I think I just kind of kept thinking like, oh my God, I have 2 postgraduate degrees now. Do I really need a third? That seems
Yeah.
excessive. But then the more professionals that I spoke to, they were like, if you want to be an archivist, this is kind of what you have to do.
Mm.
And you can do it while you work. So I did my long distance through Dundee University. So it was 2.5 years of working full time and studying part time.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
quite the investment.
yeah. It was quite an investment, and I'm kind of really surprised that I managed to get through it, because I can be quite bad at self motivating with things like that.
Well, clearly it means you like it if you were able to make
Yeah,
the commitment.
yeah, and I knew that it would be worthwhile. And now that I'm kind of out the other end of it, which doesn't really seem real yet, it's all been worth it. And this is my first, like I said, my first kind of proper solo professional gig.
So it's not only dealing with the archival materials themselves and preparing them and caring for them, but then cataloging them and figuring out how we can make the most of managing and sort of accessing this material so people can continue to learn from it in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so much of what we do as archivists has to have a mind on how people are going to use it. So even when you're doing something like rehousing something, so putting something in a new kind of folder or an envelope, you kind of have to think, well, yeah, but how is anyone going to actually open this safely? Or is there going to need to be supervision? Are they going to need to wear gloves if it's photographs? You kind of
Mhm.
think about all of these things, and you kind of have to think about the stakeholders that are involved. So there's like the V&A, there's the theatre, there's kind of loads of people with different interests in this, and yeah, it's a lot of juggling, but it's great. I really really enjoy it.
What's one thing about the career that you wish more people knew?
I think generally just what it is. So many people are like,
Well, there we
oh,
go. We're
that
helping to
sounds
solve
good.
that with this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, I kind of describe it to people as, I guess a lot of people think they know what a museum curator does. And I guess the work that we do as archivists helps facilitate their jobs. So
Mm.
they rely on archival records being accessible and correct in order to find out the information that they need about an object or a painting or, whatever it may be.
So you're creating sort of all of that content, and they then pull from it to decide
Yeah.
what aspect to share that's relevant to whatever exhibit they're putting on or some display
Yeah,
they're creating.
yeah, exactly. So, like people in the theatre have said to me, "Oh God, by the time you're finished, you'll know more about the theatre than any of us." And kind of like, yeah, I will obviously have absorbed a lot of knowledge during that time, but I kind of see my role more as facilitating other people becoming experts.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and I think that I would like people to maybe be more aware of archiving in general when they look at objects in museums or galleries. There's a thing called provenance with museum objects, paintings, and it's so important because it's the paper chain really of where an object or painting has come from and its ownership. And that information all exists in archives. And if archivists aren't doing their job properly, then that information gets lost, and then it's hard to prove whether a painting is authentic or not.
So yeah, you're really doing all of the deep work to
Yeah.
make this stuff make sense.
Mm.
Well, now I'm even more floored at the fact that you were already working full time and doing your postgraduate program on top of your full time work, and you run an Instagram account dedicated to your love of beer. So clearly, you're busy. So, outside of your full time role and your work as an archivist, you love beer. So, what got you into it? You run the Instagram account Hoppy Raptor, which now the Jurassic Park thing is making more sense to me as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell me a bit about your journey into beer and sort of how you started learning more about it.
So I've worked in pubs kind of on and off since I was 18. But when I was 18, I didn't really think anything about alcohol in general. Really, it was just, does this taste pleasant and can it get me drunk? And then when I was a student, I went to university in Canterbury and drank a bit more ale there. Like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. But then kind of I think when I was in my late 20s, I just started thinking a bit more about what I was drinking and realized that actually I'd spent years drinking like really rubbish cider and really like mass produced lager and not really enjoying it. And I started drinking more ale again, just kind of thinking, oh, actually, this is a bit more interesting. There's something more about it. And then when I was working at a pub that sadly no longer exists called the Trevor Arms in Blind, I was working with a couple of people who just completely opened my eyes to the variety of beer, of how to really think about what I was drinking. And when we were working at the pub, a brewery called Gun Brewery from East Sussex had just started. And I think we were one of the first pubs to get their beer on cask. And that was like pretty much a big revelation. It was like, wow, this is incredible. Like it's not cold, it's not fizzy, but it's delicious.
Beer can taste like something.
Yeah, it tastes like something. And one of the people I worked with, whose name is Mary, who now runs a really great bottle shop in Hastings called Elam Bear, she introduced me to Mikkeller, Danish brewery, and Tuol, and well, I mean, like they just completely blew my mind. I was like, what the hell is this witchcraft? It's incredible. Um, and
The crazy adjuncts they add in, these interesting flavors. Yeah, they seem to push all the boundaries.
yeah, and all like the crazy, like it was bottles then, it wasn't cans, but like, well, most of it was bottles, like all the crazy kind of bottle art, and it was just seemed so interesting. It seemed super creative, like everything they were doing. Their brand identity was super creative. What was going in the bottles was super
Mhm.
creative, and it was just so interesting. And I just kind of, it was, yeah, I was gone from then really.
And then what
And
led you to set up your
yeah,
Instagram?
I started my Instagram in 2015, but it wasn't really about beer. And I can't pinpoint what made me specifically make it focus on beer, but there was something about it. I think the more Instagram accounts that I saw that were talking about beer, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I could do that. And then
Mhm.
I just, yeah, I kind of found it kind of organically went more and more beer. I think I just found that the more interested I got in beer, the more I went on holidays and to places for beer. So,
Mhm.
like every kind of journey I went on, it was like, oh, is there a brewery near, or is there an interesting pub or something? And
And you just wanted to share what you were finding.
yeah, yeah, and get and see what other people were drinking. I mean, there's such a huge wealth of Instagram accounts now about craft beer, but like even 2 or 3 years ago, there weren't hardly as many.
Yeah, right. I do agree it wasn't where it is now. But let's talk a bit about the gender divide on Instagram
Mm,
because you mentioned to me you still find it to be quite a boys' club,
yeah.
saying some of your male friends on Instagram have an audience of over 80% male followers.
Well, I looked at my audience as well, and it's only 25% female.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but
Now you
interestingly
make me
enough,
want to go check mine.
yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that's quite a I should have asked a couple of my female friends who also have their Instagram accounts what their split was. I think I've had a couple of instances where people have thought I've been a guy. Like a couple of people have like either privately messaged me or responded to something that I've said with kind of a kind of male, not so much pronoun, but like guy or mate or something like that. That kind of
Mhm.
and I've sort of had to.
Even though yours very clearly says Ellie on
Yeah,
the
exactly.
profile.
You clearly just haven't looked at my profile.
Yeah, and just sent you
Um,
the message right away.
yeah.
Well, mine is 57% men, 43%
Oh,
women. So
great.
closer to even,
Oh,
but
yay. Okay.
we're not there yet.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if it makes a difference that my handle is not obviously female.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a funny one though, isn't it? Because you don't know whether how much of it you're being particularly sensitive to because you're looking for the problem.
Mm.
Because I spent so long working in pubs and seeing and receiving firsthand quite a lot of like sexist nonsense, like me trying to explain to guys like, oh, this beer's like this beer's like this, maybe you want to try this, for them to kind of ignore me, and then for my male manager to come around and say exactly the same thing, and then being like, oh, thanks mate, yeah, that's really good, oh brilliant, yeah, I'll take one of those, oh thanks very much. It's like, oh, did I not just say all of that to you? But
Yeah.
and kind of have your opinions completely dismissed out of hand.
Do you find then by being sort of behind a screen, does that
Yeah.
make it different? You can say what you want and no one questions it. You just get to put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say that, maybe I don't have as many followers as some other people because I'm female. I would like to think that's not the case, but there are times when it definitely feels like I'll read some people's posts and be like, mate, okay, I mean, like, that's a nice photo, but, you've not really told me anything about the beer and you've got like 500 likes. Yeah, and then I read some people's posts and I'm like, oh, that's really thoughtful and really insightful, and they've only got, like, I don't know, 80 likes or something.
Yeah,
But
right. Like this person really knows what they're on about or
yeah,
has put some time and effort into their description.
I think it's just, a kind of pool of interest around a certain style of photography, a certain style of writing.
Mhm.
And I think I certainly have kind of looking back through my account, I certainly recognised that there was a period where I was trying to emulate that kind of slightly more blokey. I think because most of the accounts that I was looking at were blokes, maybe like trying
Mm.
to emulate that kind of thing. And then I just felt actually that's not kind of my voice.
And do you think you've seen more women coming onto the platform then and you're finding
Yeah,
more women to engage with as well?
yeah, definitely, absolutely, which has been yeah, really, really great because yeah, it just feels like there's absolutely kind of no judgment and no bravado. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like sometimes, especially around kind of like hype beers and things like that, often there's so much kind of am I allowed to say dick measuring?
Yeah, say whatever you gotta say.
So much of that kind of thing, like, oh, I've got this many of this beer and I've got this coming, and it's like, oh god, get your dicks out already. But yeah, so it is nice, and I love the kind of I mean, dare I say it, diversity. I've certainly made friends with people in the beer world that I wouldn't have made friends with in any other world,
Mhm.
which is great. But I think there's definitely still a lot of work to do. And I think we're all having our eyes opened right now, especially about how much work there is to do in general about
Yeah, it's a
things
great
that
point
I
beyond
think,
just gender diversity.
yeah, and things that I think perhaps, from our position of white privilege, we've kind of maybe thought, oh, well, things are better than they were, so it's okay. It's like, no,
Mhm.
it's
We
not
all
good
have a lot
enough.
more work to do, and
Yeah,
I think we're all just that's really sinking in.
yeah, exactly. So,
Have you
yeah,
felt any pushback kind of trying to engage with the beer community on Instagram as a woman, or do you have advice for other women? Is it just go out there and do it?
I think I would say, yeah, just kind of persevere with it. But also, like, find good female allies, find friends, because I've got a couple of really good friends now from Instagram.
Yeah, if there
And
are any accounts you wanna mention that have made you feel really welcome.
oh yeah, so I mean Mary Hoppins, yeah, she's just like, yeah, she's a total babe and a total rock. And you could just, I just sometimes we'll just message each other and be like, oh, blah 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 blah.
This person said this, cool.
Yeah, or just have a have like a conversation about like a beer or a whatever, even not beer related. Actually we've just become kind of properly good friends, which is really nice, just in kind of a space where you don't feel there's any judgment, or you don't feel like you have to kind of prove anything, or it's nice just to be able to kind of just relax sometimes and not feel
Yeah.
like you've got to be constantly kind of on your game. So yeah, but yeah, I would definitely recommend Mary Hoppins and A Woman's Brew, whose real name is Jo. She's really, really great. She brews her own beer in her kitchen, and tried some of her cranberry saison last year, and that was incredible.
Oh,
It was
amazing. Oh, that sounds really good.
so nice. I was blown away that you could get that quality from your kitchen. It was excellent.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you found so many great people
Yeah.
to connect with online as well.
Mm.
And where do you get most of your beers? Where do you do lots of trades, or are you just keeping an
Um,
eye out for interesting things to try and then share?
it's terrible, really. I fall a bit into the kind of hype trap. Like I get really carried away with it, and I'm like, no, this is ridiculous. Actually, you don't need this. This is
You
not the
gotta
most
get your hands on
expensive
it.
beer you're going to drink. It's another hazy double IPA. Like there's only so many of those that you really need to drink. Um, so I do, like, sometimes through kind of trades with people or breweries where they kind of release things in multiple packs. So like you can only buy a 6-pack of something,
Mhm.
or go in with a few people on that. I've got like
Oh,
a
that's
few,
quite cool.
yeah, like a few chat groups on Instagram that I'm part of, and so if there's something like that, people will be like, oh, who wants in on the late, this release or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really nice way to make it accessible to everyone.
yeah, yeah, and then kind of there's a group of you that have kind of got it together, and you can kind of chat about it because you drink it at the same time or whatever, which is nice. They're really lucky in Cambridge. Before I moved here, I did my research. I was really concerned moving from Sussex that there wouldn't be good beer here. So I did my research, and there's a bottle shop called Thirsty, which has just thrived since lockdown. They've been doing local delivery and recently collection, and they always get loads of really good stuff in. And the owner's really kind of interested in wine as well, and he's really big on his sours and his saisons. So yeah, they've usually got some really interesting stuff, which is great. And it's nice to be able to shop locally.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you enjoy most about beer?
Um, that's funny because I think before lockdown, I would always have said like the people and the social experience, kind of people come out for beer in a way I don't think they do for anything else. Like people go to the pub for a pint on their own, and people don't go for dinner on
Mhm.
their own. Generally, I'm generalizing. There's just a weird conviviality about beer that I don't think really I've not seen kind of really in anything else, which I really like. But since lockdown, obviously, I've been drinking on my own.
But you've still got that great online community.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is a shared experience. I think it's that kind of scrolling through Instagram, being like, oh, I wonder what this person thought of this, or oh, that's interesting, they've got that, oh, I wonder where they got that from, and oh, I've never seen one of those before. It's just such a journey of discovery, and I just feel like there's always something else that I could learn, or a new beer to try. I can't see myself getting bored with it anytime soon. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel the same.
I can't imagine a world where I'd be bored going to a brewery or bored going to a new pub, or the thought of trying a new beer wouldn't be exciting.
We've always got so much to look forward to. All right, well, I've got one last question for you, and we've sort of spoken a bit about it already. But normally on the podcast, I'm speaking to women who work in beer to showcase what roles are available and sort of who to speak to if you'd like to join the industry too. So, are there any women that you'd like to shout out, either from your career, becoming an archivist, or in the beer world, as you've mentioned, Mary Hoppins and A Woman's Brew, that have just helped make you feel more welcome in what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So, well, in the beer world, a kind of big influence on me was Teresa Undine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she takes some beautiful photos.
Oh, she takes such beautiful photos. I found her Instagram page about a year before I realised that two really good friends of mine in Brighton knew her because she used to run a pub in Brighton. So then I finally met her at an Indie Man, I think 27 Indie Man 2017, and I was like mega fangirl. I was like, oh my god, you from the internet. And she probably just thought I was a total weirdo. Anyway, yeah, but we've kind of met up a whole bunch of times since, and she's really great. She really knows her stuff, and her photos are beautiful. So she's definitely an account worth checking out.
Amazing. Well, those are plenty of awesome accounts to follow, and I really appreciate your time and not only educating us all about what an archivist is and does and all the great work you've done, but yeah, sharing your insight into the beer world. So I want to say cheers. It feels so strange to be at a
I
distance.
know, yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks again for your time, Ellie. Be sure to check out Ellie's Instagram at HoppyRaptor. You'll also find a link to all of the awesome accounts Ellie shouted out in the show notes, too. Come on back next week to hear from podcast producer and Porter fan, Gabrielle Corbett. Chat soon.